Bryan Kohberger was initially compared to BTK, but the reality is that they had nothing in common other than the fact that they murdered people. The only reason these two were put side by side is the fact that Kohberger studied criminology under Dr. Catherine Ramsland, who analyzed many serial killers and co-authored the autobiography of Dennis Rader. Kohberger did copy someone, but that was in fact Danny Rolling, also known as the Gainesville Ripper, and as soon as we go through these serial killers' actions, you're gonna feel the same way too. Rolling did not have the same luck as Kohberger. He was executed by lethal injection back in 2006, a fate that Bryan Kohberger should have faced as well, but that's another discussion. Recently, because of the gag order being lifted, a lot of documents came to light, and one of those documents includes Kohberger's search history on Christmas evening 2022, just a little over a month after Xana, Ethan, Kaylee, and Maddie were murdered. Aside from the fact that he was looking for ways to sell his car, get rid of it, since the Hyundai Elantra was all over the news, that night he did some deep dives into some serial killer cases, one of which was Danny Rolling. Bryan was especially interested in him. That was not the first time Kohberger searched for info about Danny Rolling though. He actually did that in November as well, shortly after the murders. Given his field of study, I'm pretty sure that he was already familiar with the case of the Gainesville Ripper, way before he ever planned the Idaho 4 killings. Rolling had a very different upbringing than Kohberger's. His environment was never as stable as Kohberger's. His father was a Korean War veteran and also a police officer. This man was very abusive towards his wife and his two sons, so Danny Rolling grew up in a very violent household. Kohberger, on the other hand, had a very typical childhood and a normal family. As a young adult, Rolling got in trouble with the authorities for robberies and for spying on women. After spending most of his life in Louisiana, he traveled to Florida where, in August of 1990, he committed the 5 murders that sent him on death row. On August 24, in the early hours, Rolling broke into an apartment shared by 2 university freshmen, 18-year-old Sonia Larson and 17-year-old Christina Powell. He first saw Powell asleep on the downstairs couch. He stood over her but decided not to wake her up, and then he moved on to the upstairs bedroom where Larson was also sleeping. Rolling attacked Larson. He taped her mouth shut to ensure her screams would not attract any attention. She fought him as hard as she could, but he stabbed her to death. The weapon he used? It was a K-bar knife, just like the one Kohberger had. He then returned downstairs to Powell, restrained her, taped her mouth shut as well, and essayed her before fatally stabbing her 5 times in the back. Afterward, Rolling returned to Larson's room and engaged in further inappropriate acts with her body. He arranged the victims' bodies in provocative positions, cleaned himself up, and then left the apartment. The following day, August 25, 1990, Rolling broke into the apartment of 18-year-old Krista Hoyt, a chemistry honors student at Santa Fe College, by prying open a sliding glass door. Finding that she was not home, he waited in the living room for her return. Between 10:30 and 11 p.m., Hoyt arrived after playing racquetball with a friend and was confronted by Rolling. He restrained her, gagged her with duct tape, and tied her wrists, then led her into the bedroom where he essayed her and ultimately stabbed her in the back while she was being held face down. He then turned her face up and he cut her abdomen open from the breastbone all the way to her private area. He left the apartment, but he soon discovered that he couldn't find his wallet, so he thought he dropped it at the crime scene, so he went back. He really wanted to make sure that whoever discovered the murder would be shocked. He decapitated Hoyt. He posed her body in a sitting position at the edge of the bed and put her head on a nearby shelf facing the rest of the body. Rolling was a special kind of evil. Of course, the murders received widespread media attention. Just like in the Idaho 4 killings, students began taking extra precautions, altering their routines, sleeping in groups, and some either withdrew or transferred to other schools due to safety concerns. This happened in Idaho as well, because both students and their parents were terrified by the fact that the killer was still on the loose. But Rolling was not done. 2 days later, on August 27, Rolling broke into the apartment of 23-year-old Tracy Poles through the sliding glass door. Tracy did not live alone. Her roommate, Manny Taboada, also 23 years old, was asleep in his bedroom. Rolling woke him up and then killed him. Tracy heard noise and she went back to check on Manny, and that's when she saw Rolling. Just like Xana heard commotion and went up the stairs to check on Kaylee and Maddie when she saw Bryan Kohberger. Kohberger chased Xana to her room and killed her, and Rowling did the same to Tracy. He broke through her door, he taped her mouth and wrists, he essayed her, and then he forced her to turn face down and stabbed her in the back 3 times. He again posed her body in a provocative position. He did not do the same with Manny's body. Kohberger didn't have to kill Ethan, just like Rowling didn't have to kill Manny. Kohberger had already killed Kaylee, Maddie, and Xana, and Ethan was no threat to him. He was passed out, he was in deep sleep. I wonder if the only reason he killed Ethan was to copy what Rowling did. Rowling killed 5 students, 4 females and 1 male, but these were not his first murders. On November 4, 1989, Louisiana police informed Florida authorities about an unsolved triple homicide in Shreveport. Detectives noticed striking similarities between these murders and the Gainesville killings, involving 55-year-old Tom Grissom, his 24-year-old daughter Julie, and his 8-year-old grandson Sean. The family was attacked at home while preparing dinner, and Julie's body had been cleaned, mutilated, and posed. In November 1990, Don Maines, an investigator with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, traveled to Shreveport to examine the connection between the cases. Similarities included the posing of victims, tape residue on the bodies, and the use of vinegar to clean them. Maines noted that testing of the perpetrator's body fluids from Shreveport revealed type B blood, matching evidence from the Gainesville murders. Shortly after Maine's trip to Shreveport, a local resident, Cindy Jurasich, contacted Crime Stoppers suggesting that Danny Rowling might be linked to the murders in both cities. 3 months earlier, in August 1990, she had heard a news report about a series of killings which made her think of Rowling. She knew him from her hometown church in Louisiana and recalled his unsettling behavior and comments to her and her then-husband, Stephen Dobbin. Dobbin mentioned that Rowling had admitted having a disturbing tendency and that he liked to stick knives into people. The police found Rowling very fast. He was already in custody for a robbery. The robbery took place just 10 days after the bodies of Pauls and Taboada were discovered. At the time, Rowling was being held in the Marion County Jail, about 40 miles south of Gainesville. Investigators confirmed that Rowling had type B blood, matching the suspect in both the Gainesville and Shreveport murders. When Florida authorities learned of Rowling's prior convictions for armed robbery, they considered that he might also be responsible for the bank robbery that happened on the day Krista Hoyt's body was found. They reviewed evidence from the crime scene, including a gun, screwdriver, bag of money, and cassette player, and among these items they identified tools that matched marks left at the Gainesville murder scenes. Rowling had been living in a small camp in a wooded area near apartment complexes frequented by students, and investigators discovered audio diaries he had recorded there that referenced the crimes. It was later revealed that on August 5, 1990, Rowling broke into the home of another woman in Sarasota, Florida. He bound and gagged her with duct tape and assaulted her, but she survived the encounter. In November 1991, Rowling was formally charged with 5 counts of murders. His trial was about to start almost 4 years after the killings. He admitted that his motive was a desire to become as famous as Ted Bundy. Then, in 1994, just a little while before the trial got underway, Rowling surprised everyone by pleading guilty to all charges. This is the exact same thing that Bryan Kohberger did. I know I didn't see it coming, him pleading guilty to all of the killings. The difference is that Kohberger got a plea deal and therefore avoided the death penalty, whereas Rowling did get the capital punishment. Kohberger was compared to Ted Bundy as well because he had also killed college students during one of his escapes from prison. We don't know who Kohberger was trying to copy or who he was trying to be, but I believe that the similarities between what he did in Idaho and what Danny Rowling did in Gainesville are far more evident. They both chose college female students. They both used K-bar knives. They both killed one male victim that did not represent a threat to them, and they killed them just because they had the opportunity to do so. And they both used sliding glass doors to gain entrance into the victims' homes. Sure, there are several huge differences between the cases. Kohberger committed all of the murders in one night, while Rowling did this in the span of 4 days. Rowling posed the victims' bodies while Kohberger didn't. Rowling also essayed the victims and Bryan did not. That's one aspect that I never agreed with in the investigation of the Idaho 4 killings. They said it was not sexually motivated, but it kind of was. Kohberger clearly had an obsession with one of the girls, if not all of them, and isn't murdering them because he had no chance to ever get into a relationship with them scream sexual motivation? Also, I don't think that this was the first time that Kohberger killed someone. I strongly believed he did this before. I know there is no proof of that, but I wouldn't be surprised if years from now we will find out that he had other victims as well. I mean, I know he was a criminology student, but he did a hell of a good job in cleaning his car, disposing of the murder weapon and the clothes that he wore that night. And I think the DNA on the knife sheet, the sloppy job he did regarding his phone pinging at the location of the crimes prior to the murders, and him directly shutting his phone when committing the killings instead of leaving it at home, to me this sounds more like mistakes committed by someone who was overly confident that he would not get caught. Who is so confident? People that did this before and got away with it. Again, this is just my opinion, don't quote me on that. So what happened to Danny Rowling? He was executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison on October 25, 2006. His last meal was lobster tail, and he had no final words right before his execution, but he did leave a handwritten confession regarding the Shreveport killings and an apology. His crimes inspired the franchise Scream, which we all know was incredibly successful. Several documentaries and true crime episodes featured Danny Rowling, the most recent one being in January 2022, the same year that Kohberger decided to murder Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan. Again, I can't help but imagine how Bryan Kohberger followed this case for years, and then he got the courage to act after watching this documentary. But what do you think? Do you see the similarities between Kohberger and Danny Rowling? Let me know in the comments. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.